So thank you for coming. Uh, Hopefully this topic sounded interesting. It's definitely one of the more interesting topics I think that I've seen spring up in the market recently. Basically, this is a new job title, and there are a few new job titles springing up. This one was one of the first in the AI space for marketing, and I think it's probably one of the more um, like the ones that actually have real use cases that they can deliver on now. And today is the practical session, so I've only got a few slides to talk through, and I'll be as quick as I possibly can on those slides, really just to set some context about why this role is something maybe that you want to consider, or maybe it's something that in a team you want to think about bringing someone like this in. But today I'm going to show some demos as well. What I won't have time to do is like step through those demos and teach you basically how to do it yourself. I'm just going to provide you ideas and thinking and just give you the confidence actually that this stuff I haven't done any magic here. The tools that I'm using are the same tools that you potentially have access to. And all I've done is try to wire up the workflow. Cool. So kicking off, what is a content engineer? A content engineer is basically traditionally, actually I've got a slide on this, maybe I should have prepared better, but traditionally it would be like a content strategist. So someone that is looking at what kind of content they need to create based on hopefully some metrics, hopefully some data, and then they're actually orchestrating the creation of that content, sometimes themselves if you're in a smaller business, or sometimes with a team. But instead now this role is transitioning into the content engineer. Just to give some stats, so 70% of content marketers are struggling to scale at the moment. They're being asked to deliver more than they ever have before across more channels than they ever have before. And traditionally, you would have more people coming into your team to deliver this. And actually, some people will be focused on very specific channels. And you would farm out the content creation across those different channels. That would sometimes create like silos of information. Sometimes the campaign just wouldn't resonate across all the different channels because it would be different, written by different people. So it was like creating this kind of just natural degradation of how good that content could be. 58% of marketers say that lack of resources is a #1 challenge, and oftentimes that will be linked to people and headcount to actually deliver this rather than necessarily the systems or the platforms that they have available. 48% struggle to scale content creation, and part of that is because a lot of marketeers that are not necessarily au fait to what AI is enabling them to do are stuck in the content production ways of the systems that they've used traditionally. So I might be stuck in my ways of Marketo and thinking that dynamic content is the way that maybe I produce different types of content for different people. But that requires me to set up each individual piece myself, thinking about what that piece is and repeating that process again and again and again, which just is not scalable today. 19% of marketers who are content marketers have AI actually baked into their workflow. That doesn't necessarily mean that they don't use AI, but actually in their workflow doing a series of tasks for them without them having to like go over to the chatbot and type messages into the chatbot. And then 32% of B2B marketers report strategy successes. So successes in actually implementing some of this in what they do. The old model of content engineering, so actually I would say content creation, is to, as I said before, hire more people. Every single piece of content is a new task, potentially gets farmed out to a different person than it was last time. It's quite inefficient. The new model is to build systems that actually produce this content for you. And as we know, AI is an incredible resource for being able to create words. Yes, some of those words sometimes sound like AI, but there's ways around that too. And scaling by engineering rather than scaling by adding additional headcount into the team is quite an important part about this role. A content engineer doesn't produce pieces, they produce systems that produce pieces at scale. And really what I wanted to highlight on this slide was really what is encompassed in a content engineer role. So it's content strategy, It is someone who is a prompt engineer, so able to like craft the prompts to actually get the right kind of output. It's a workflow architect, someone that can put logic together on a workflow. It's a data analyst, look at the insights, determine what it's telling you, refine your prompts, and a guardian of the brand. So traditionally, these might be managed by different heads. Now, actually, many of those things are falling underneath this one role. And obviously, they will have support from some dedicated people, but largely they need to be on top of this to be able to produce content at scale. Content engineering literally has come about in the last 12 months. Maybe you could potentially reference it before then, but in reality, of it actually being a real thing, it's only in the last 12 months that this title has become real. However, there are now, 64,000 content engineering jobs on LinkedIn already. So 64,000 roles that are available for this particular title. Someone that is able to string workflows together and actually produce content at scale rather than expanding on headcount. The salary is quite significant for this kind of role because it combines a little bit of technical skill alongside that marketing skill, and obviously being AI focused and forward. I haven't validated that number, so I don't take that as gospel. And yeah, literally over the last 12 months, this has really, really grown. Been brought into the limelight, this role. A content engineer is someone that will always look to automate the repetitive. So they aren't going to just create this content by hand anymore. They won't be farming it out to other people. They are going to be looking for those opportunities to standardize things and then bring that standardization into a process that they can then replicate. So imagine I receive a brief from a marketeer. If that brief is different to the next 3 briefs I receive, I'm not going to be happy with that, and I'm going to try and standardize that process. And once that process is standardized, I can move to the next stage, which is to then turn that into multiple pieces of content based on that standard that we're happy to work with. They'll also build those scalable systems, which once you build them once, and this is the nice thing about content engineering, once you build your systems, you're then refining those systems and optimizing those systems based on the data that you receive back. So because content engineers are traditionally people that are thinking a bit more about analytics than what a maybe content strategist traditionally would, they're able to then do micro optimizations to the types of content that they create based on what they're seeing in terms of the engagement based on the content they write. And these are no longer like traditionally they would have to hold that information in their head potentially and then think about that as they were writing the content. These are now just managed by systems, and therefore they're super measurable, and therefore we can actually make massive change based on making these small optimizations in a system as opposed to in our thought process. I will come on to this. Actually, maybe I'll talk about this and then we can actually see this in practice of the types of things that I've built. So a content engineer will have a few things, a few tools that they will implement or consider when they come into their role. They will need a brand kit, and this brand kit is the thing that they actually use to create content that sounds like your business or you or whoever it is that you're writing this content for, which is going to include things like tone of voice, how you actually write and what kind of linguistic patterns that you use, what messaging and pillars it can draw on. So if your brief, say, doesn't have enough insight or info, it can bring back into some of those pillars, who your audiences are and what their personas are, and examples. Like you probably already know, when you're writing prompts, you should always provide examples where you can, unless you want it to be super creative. So examples for this, creating content are pretty much essential. You should have examples, blog posts, LinkedIn posts, social posts, examples for every single specific type of content that you want to produce, and then multiple of those too. So the model can frame the content in the same context as what you've been used to writing. The next thing in their toolbox would be their prompt library. And this is like reusable prompts that they can use for each different type of asset that gets created. And you might think, well, maybe we've already got all the information we need from the examples and from the tone of voice and the pillars document, but actually this is much more focused on the type of content that's actually being produced. So if I'm producing a LinkedIn post, I need to be able to provide what kind of length generally our LinkedIn posts should have, or maybe where the links would normally go for our LinkedIn posts, or if we have hashtags that we try and use in our posts, this is where I would include those specifics, the specific guardrails around the type of content I'm producing. Or if it's a blog post, or if it's a case study, whatever it is that I'm producing, these are the focused guardrails around what I'm producing. The persona specific prompt variation. So as I'm creating content, I'm not just creating content for LinkedIn or a blog. I might actually be doing some hyper personalized content and actually producing content for our personas. And if you're not used to what personas are, these are like different audiences that you try and target within your marketing campaigns. So for Google, for example, you would have a developer audience, but then also you would have like a CMO. Both of those would want to be communicated to very differently. And this is how we're able to like scale our content to different stakeholders. And then finally, some quality check prompts. So once I've actually written my content, how do I validate that this actually sounds like us? And again, that's done through looking at the examples and validating it against other pieces of content that we have said, yes, this meets the standard. And then finally, we've got the quality gates, human in the loop. Like this is essential for this role. Content cannot just be produced and then put into the market without it being reviewed. Like we're not at that stage yet. And actually, you will see lots of horror stories of where that has happened. So yeah, really, this is just building in human in the loop that's actually scalable and manageable by them, or maybe by their teams. Content engineering should take one piece of anchor content and then build it into multiple pieces. So here's an example of how one big research report that a company does maybe 3 times a year could be scaled into 10 different assets. And this happens today already. It's just this happens with people rather than processes and technology. But now it's much more possible with processes and technology. I'll come on to this later. These are some people that have actually done it that you may wish to go and look up. These are real content engineers that have changed the way that their businesses work. So let's jump into some demos. I'm going to start with the simplest demo, and then I'll move to more complex demos. You may or may not have seen Google Workspace Studio. Google Workspace Studio, if you haven't seen it, is you can get to it from studio.workspace.google.com, sorry. And it is a very simple tool that lets you string multiple activities together. And what I've done is I've created my very, very simple content engineering workflow. And what I'll do after this session is I'll share this with you, and you can obviously look through it. You can see how simple it is, and you can potentially tweak it and tailor it for your needs if you have the same need that I do, or this may trigger an idea that actually, I'm not a content engineer, but I do stuff when stuff gets put into folders or something like that. So I'll leave it with you afterwards anyway to mull over. What this does is this first step looks at a Google Drive folder. So I've got a Google Drive folder that is my simple AI agent example folder. And whenever a file is added to this folder, and I'm going to always assume that this file is a brief. I'm not checking this. I'm just going to assume that this is a brief about a campaign that needs to be built. I will then do one thing that's very important for this to be successful. If, for example, I gave this brief to my LinkedIn Gemini bot and my blog post bot, this brief is like maybe multiple pages long. And to get the insights out of this brief, Gemini is saying, like, reading this entire brief, and it's creating its insights every single time it reads it. So if I send this brief to my LinkedIn bot or my blog bot or my email creator bot, it's going to potentially have a different narrative each time it runs this activity. Like, you might hope it's the same, but AI is not deterministic, so I can't guarantee that. One of the ways I can guarantee that every single one of our agents, let's call them, that we have doing our activities of creating our content does get the same narrative is by running this brief through a Gemini step like this one and getting it to create that narrative for me. And that means I'm taking the brief once, I'm creating the narrative around what the campaign should look like, and then I'm feeding that narrative into my LinkedIn agent and my blog agent and my email creation agent. And that's a really important step. If you feed the same information into 3 different models, the bigger that bit of info, sorry, the 3 different steps, the bigger that information, the more likely it is it's going to make a different judgment. So therefore, if you can put a step in up front that simplifies that information and makes it easier for the next steps to run with less variance, you absolutely should. And that's what I call this sort of narrative step. So this is basically just saying, read this marketing brief, pull out the narrative. Like, I'm not writing any major, massive prompts here. Obviously, I could engineer these better, but this is proof of concept demo today. You may wish to come in and start engineering these better. And that's going to take what is a variable in this step. So that's going to take the file that was added to the drive folder. Now, one of the nice things that this enables me to do by being this way around, rather than someone send this to my inbox, my Gmail or whatever, and then I go to that Gmail email and I download the attachment, I read the brief, and then I think about writing the content. This is something that's just happening in the background for me now. So if I send this drive folder to this team that's potentially sending me these briefs for me to build, I'm not having to go and kick off this process. This process has already kicked off, and this content is already being written for me without me having to be involved. And the final step, you'll see, send me a chat message, and then that's when I get involved, once an activity has already happened. The next step is, you don't necessarily have to do this. You could just write this into your prompts. But this is a nice way of doing it. I just wanted to include it as an example. The next step is just like standardizing on the prompts that we're going to use throughout the campaign. So throughout the workflow. So this step is looking at a spreadsheet that I have. This spreadsheet has 2 columns. I was hoping it might open if I clicked it, but it's got 2 columns basically. One column is prompts and one column is like examples. And all I'm doing is I'm pulling the prompts, as you might see here. Look in the column that says prompt for the writing guidance. This is like how algo marketing writes. And all I did was ask ChatGPT determine how this company writes and create me a report. Stuck it in that field, in that spreadsheet, and then give me the examples. And that's basically just looking in the examples column for the row that has examples in it. Nothing special, but what that means is me and my team, we could share prompts. We could share these like ever improving prompts, which is one of the things that a content engineer would do, would be trying to create these workflows that other people would be able to leverage, and therefore centralizing any bit of information that gets reused. So I've simply done that in a Google Sheet here. So I'm pulling out the writing guidance and the examples. My next step, so the Gemini step next, I'm saying, create me a LinkedIn post for this campaign brief using the narrative, examples, and tone. And you'll see here, I've just said, let's get the narrative from step 2, which is where we said, let's create the narrative from the brief. Give me the tone that I pulled out the spreadsheet, and give me the examples that I pulled out the spreadsheet. Gemini will then write me the blog post based on the brief and based on the narrative and the examples, and then it will store that in a Google Doc. And it's storing that in a LinkedIn tab in that Google Doc, and it's adding it to the top of that Google Doc each time, so the most relevant content is at the top. And this is happening every time someone uploads a file to that drive folder, remember. And then I repeat the same process for a blog. And then I repeat the same process for an email, just saying I want a different type of content. In an ideal world, I'd spend more time crafting this prompt, saying exactly what our emails look like, potentially, what kind of structure they have, so that it was able to produce the content as best as possible, but it does have some of that in the examples. My final step is to notify me in chat. And when it notifies me in the chat, it just sends me a message to Google Chat And the nice thing about this is, as I said before, I don't have to be involved in the drive upload anymore. I don't have to be involved in the even starting or kicking off of this process. That already happens before I even get notified. And so if we have a look at these docs, let's quickly open up a Google Doc that has that content in it. Potentially is this one. Maybe I should have opened this before. It's definitely not that one. That was a brief. As you can tell, I've done a bit of testing before this. Maybe it's this. Maybe that was the one I just opened. I'll find it in a minute. I don't know which one it is. What was it called? Add to a doc.
I can't remember.
Well, yeah, no, neither can I, clearly. So apologies. It was called Simple AI Agent Google Workspace Flows. So
I was just going to say that.
yeah.
It's that third one in, isn't it?
Probably.
Hmm.
So this is what it looks like. It's quite straightforward and simple. And it is just pulling the latest post to the top of this document and automatically writing my LinkedIn post, my blog post, and my email copy into this doc. And there are multiple in here. Obviously, given better prompting, I would get it to split this out a bit better and add probably a horizontal line across when it's actually writing a new piece of content. But just a quick and dirty example of how a content engineer might not be happy just writing the same content, or might even not be happy going over to ChatGPT or Gemini and saying, create me 3 bits of content for this, and it spitting out a bunch of stuff and having to sort of tweak it, change it. It's basically that, creating that environment where you're no longer having to be the starting point for this and you're already off the mark before you even get started. The next one I just wanted to quickly show, probably this one. Let me just refresh this. This is called Opal, and this is like what I just showed you, but it's a bit more visual, and the output that you get is a bit more visual. And the control that you have within here, there's probably a little bit more control, but it's only available at the moment to a subset of Google countries, a subset of countries. So I can't use this in the UK. Currently on a VPN, I'm pretending to be in America to be able to use this. So if you want to use this, you may have to do something similar. But this, I think, just visualizes that whole process a lot better. And I'll show you as well how this actually improves on that process a little bit as well. So you may see the same kinds of things where we have our examples, we have our narrative document and our writing guidance, and those are being brought into these prompts. We also, I realize this is very small actually, maybe I should zoom in. Narrative guidance, examples, these are literally just text blocks showing us what an email looks like. In this tool, we have our inputs as well. So rather than listening to a Google Drive folder, someone would come to this URL and they'll provide us some information. And this time I'm saying provide me the brief, but also provide me your hero image. And I'll step you through what this looks like in a minute. Maybe I should do that now actually, because it takes a minute to run. This is what it would look like. So this is Opal's this is Opal's experience that you, as a potentially as a marketeer, might be interfacing with, that's been built by a content engineer. So it's asking me for my brief. Let's add in a brief. You can upload a document as well, and it's asking me for an image. So I'm just going to upload like a hero image that I generated with AI. And there's my image, and then it's going to start working. And what it's doing is actually it's telling me what it's doing. It's generating the image for the blog, it's generating the image for the LinkedIn and the email, and it's figuring out what the overall narrative of this campaign should be. If I jump back over to the editor, I'll talk through the rest of the steps. So these are the steps that we've just seen. That's asking someone for something. I need something. I need a brief, or give me these fields, or upload an image. Which you've seen there. Next, we do our really important step to create that one single narrative that we're going to use across all of our content streams. Next, we do a number of different things all at the same time. So I'm generating at the moment the blog, I'm generating a LinkedIn post, and I'm generating an email, much like you just saw in that Google Workspace flow. But this time I'm also generating the image because I can do that with this tool. And actually what I'm doing is I'm refining the image that the end user has provided, their hero image. And I'm reshaping it using Nano Banana Pro to fit the medium that it's going to fit in. So in LinkedIn, it will shift over the wording to be closer to the center, and it will crop it to be a square. For an email, it'll make sure it's 600 pixels wide and the content fits in. For a blog, it'll be 1,200 pixels wide. And the content will obviously fit within that area nicely. That's one of the additional things that we can do with Opal, alongside a bunch of other things that we can generate too. We can basically interface with any of the Google models, including voice, which is a really nice one if we wanted to create something that was like voice activated. The last thing we do is we take all this content together. So my last workflow that I showed you, that puts it all into a Google Doc, which is nice, like it's a step forward. But actually what this does instead of putting it into a Google Doc, and it can put into Google Docs, and I did build a workflow that did that too, but just to try and simplify this, is I'm actually getting this model to generate a web page based on all the information that it's received. And that web page can have in it things that the end user can do. So this web page is really, really straightforward. My prompt is extremely loose. But all I'm doing is providing all the content from the previous steps and the original brief. And I'm saying, create me a web page that shows me all this information so that I can look at it. And I could spend a lot more time working on this prompt and making it so this web page looks really nice. But what this means is that end user is actually able to interface with this information straight away. So if I go back to the app experience, hopefully this will finish in just a minute. We should see that it will create me a web page with the ability for me to copy out the content, with the LinkedIn post structured so that I can see the 3 different LinkedIn posts that it's created side by side, with the imagery that is generated for the different mediums that we're building for. And obviously, if I was a content engineer and I was able to produce something that the end user could actually then work with and use, so maybe even a marketeer doesn't necessarily have to get me to build their campaigns. I'm now building their campaign using my own workflow that I've created. Then I'm able to just optimize this process and continue to refine this process. Because the prompt is so loose, this looks different every time, so I don't know what we're going to be looking at together. But again, I just wanted to show proof of concept. You can crack on and have a look if you wanted to. Here I've got my campaign brief, my LinkedIn post, my email post, and my blog post. Campaign brief basically just talks about the narrative that it chose to deliver this campaign. My LinkedIn post has got my image, and you'll notice that this is a square image, which you would need for LinkedIn. It's moved all the text over, it's kept the person in frame, and I can copy that out and chuck that straight into LinkedIn if I want to. It's given me a second version and a third version for different personas. For my emails, my email image is 600 pixels wide. It's much wider than the previous one, got more of the lady in it. And then I've got 2 or 3 different emails. And then finally, my blog post. It's got a bit more height than what the email one had. And the blog post clearly needs some additional formatting, but it's all been generated. And this workflow, I'd never used Opal before until yesterday. Just shows how long I prep for these calls, I should probably say. But it literally took, I don't know, best part of 40 minutes to get this built. So if you had a bit more time, a few more examples, a real life use case, I believe you could absolutely use this tool now to deliver quite a lot of the content that you may produce for the campaigns that you run. So again, I'll share this Opal flow if you can use it. Not everyone will be able to.
I think we lost you.
Sorry, my headset turned off. I assume you can hear me now.
Yes.
Cool.
We can.
I'll share this with you. Again, it's nothing special. It's for you to consider how you may wish to use it. There are other use cases for Opal as well, like this ability to build a web page at the end of doing some activity is really quite good. If you were building, say, a research agent, something that went off and did a number of different Gemini API calls or Gemini calls, and then brought all that research together, you could build a web page around that. So just consider that. This is for a marketing workflow, but you could have a ton of different generations happening and then bring all that into one place. I look forward to this tool coming to the UK eventually. Yes. So maybe VPNs all around, unfortunately. The last tool I want to show you today is not a tool built by Google, and it's not a tool that any of you probably have access to. However, there is a free trial, so you can try it. And the idea behind this tool is that you could try it to understand, actually, to unlock, hopefully, different thinking than what you have today. Because when I was testing this, I was really excited by the idea of what this could do and how actually this takes me from what was happening in those other two workflows was like really, it was proactively reacting to stuff that gets sent to me. But the opportunity with AI means that we can do stuff that we never had time to do before. So maybe the workflows I've shown you just now are enabling you to maybe unlock a different channel. And that's great. That's like enabling you to do something that you couldn't do before. But what this tool enables you to do is potentially do that at scale. So unlock content at scale. So this is a tool called AirOps. And what they do is they try and strategically help you determine what content you should be writing. And they do that by looking at your Google Analytics information and looking at your sitemap and determining what pages are resonating with users. They do that by understanding what personas you try and target. They do that by running queries and prompts into different AI models to determine if you rank or if your competition rank. And they do that by looking at what your competition are talking about. So what I did when I set up this account, and I'm on a 14-day free trial at the moment, and I would recommend you try something like this just to see the kind of things that it starts to suggest to you, is it suggests to me some keywords around the type of business that we are. And, you know, if I wasn't someone that was just like, let's get to the demo, let's build the thing, I'd probably spend a bit more time thinking about what these keywords were than what it provided to me. But this is traditionally how we might be ranking our content on the web. So we might look at these keywords, see how they're ranking, think about how we might be able to write a piece of content to rank towards that keyword. That's all the traditional stuff. What this one does is a step above that is it actually asks questions to AI and determines how you rank based on the type of question that might be asked to hit this keyword. But what this tool does, beyond what like traditionally you may be able to do, is this will actually automatically, based on your business, write content that meets that keyword need and then help you publish that content to your website really quickly. So I don't know if you've used a tool called Clay. Last year in particular, it was like the word of marketeers, like it was the tool to be a Clay person. But it enabled marketing teams to be able to automate a lot more than they were ever able to do before. It enabled them to basically on a spreadsheet. Sorry, my cat is going nuts. I'll be back in 1 second.
I had to keep getting up because my dog was insistent that her ball was falling under the sofa. So I was, yeah, she was just sat there whining at the sofa. So that's why I was jumping up.
What this enables you to do is you have a spreadsheet-like experience. So you'll see here, this is basically like a spreadsheet. What I can do with this though, is I can get this to do activities for me. And these are like AI-enabled activities. So this first one, based on the keyword and the question, it will actually write me a brief So this is now going to go off to the web, do some research, determine what my brief might look like for actually creating a piece of content like this. Before then, if I step through one that I've already done, before then going over to the web and doing research on this particular brief and pulling in stats from other companies and, you know, what's been working or hasn't been working. It then creates an article from that brief. So if I open this, we can see on the right here, this is the article that's created. Obviously, if I want to, I can read that and make some decisions based on that. Actually, this is the cleaner article that is created. Then it will go through our website and determine other pages that are similar to this one and create links within the content that's just been written that actually link to our products and our services and our offerings that actually solve some of the challenge that we're writing for here. So this is the article with internal links, and these are the recommended links based on our website that it wants to include. It will then add external links, so go out to vendors that you have not classified as your competition and start backlinking to them. So potentially more traffic will come back to your site, or you're sending off at least to reputable sources and you're seen as a thought leader. Before then, building that into your blog system or your marketing system. One of the major bits of power of this tool is that I can run this action, this activity, across this entire set of keywords. And in the setup process, it asked me what our business was, what we did, what we sold, how we write, told me to give it a bunch of blog posts so it could analyze how we write. Actually, the content it writes is great. And so if we're looking to fill gaps in how searchable we are, in how much traffic we potentially get from an organic point of view, either through AI tools or through the web, this is like content engineering in a spreadsheet that's already been done for you. You're not needing to link these blocks together, and you're not needing to do the validation, because this tool has these power agents that will actually do a lot of that standard content engineering work for you. So what I was trying to get across with this use case was not only is this a cool tool, and you should probably go and check it out if you got the time, but this is much more of a proactive, now that I've got the capability to do this, what are the options for us to actually deliver? Like, what are the additional things that we can do now that we couldn't do before? What are the things that I can quite easily actually process, turn into processes in this tool or my own tooling that unlock new things rather than just speeding us up, unlock new things, which is potentially what this is enabling businesses to do. It's got very good reviews. I feel like I'm selling this tool now, but actually it was great fun to use and actually so simple to set up, and the stuff that it creates is great. So cool. I will finish with a couple of slides. We might even get a few minutes back unless there's questions. I'll leave you with these. Do go and look up these people, look at their stories. I will send this deck to you after this. Some quite interesting ones there about how people were able to like cut response times from community work down to 30 minutes, or increasing content velocity by 300%. But yeah, the new metrics to measure from like content marketing teams. It's not about number of blog posts a month. It's about how quickly you can go to market with the campaigns that you actually deliver now. How often you're actually being cited in AI. That is going to be hyper important. ChatGPT, for example, is already getting 2.5 billion searches in their tool now. And like it is actually taking market share from search engines, as I'm sure you know. Hours saved per published piece, not the most important thing, but it is important still. Brand voice consistency with AI. It's expected that people are going to start using AI, right? And actually, we can probably increase our brand voice when people would think that it would be decreased, as long as we're setting up these pipelines in the right way. Because before, as I was saying, a content writer is only as good as how good they're able to perceive the brand voice details, whereas an AI will actually be able to consider that potentially better than a human, especially as these models continue to improve. Content reuse rate across channels. So that slide that I showed with like one piece of content in the middle, that anchor content that gets turned into 10 different pieces, that should be tracked and monitored. And then AI search visibility. Yeah, where to start? I will share the workflows with you. That's probably a very good place to start and just tweak and consider and think about. But if you wanted something even more structured, potentially, you could start here. I won't go through this slide in detail, but really, yeah, practice with workflows, build your own brand kit, think about the prompts that you might want for creating content that's standardized and regularly produced. And if you don't already, what I would be doing if I was you and I was having to write my own prompts is I would go to Gemini or ChatGPT. I'd feed it the email that I want it to try and create, and I'd say, create me some prompts that help me make this same email every single time. And then I would refine those prompts that it comes up for me. So just a tip. Yes, the shift from content creator to content engineer is mindset. And we say this pretty much about every role. That AI isn't necessarily that. The AI tools that we have today already don't necessarily require us to have incredible deep technical thinking. They do require us, however, to be thinking in a different way than what we have been traditionally. And we're not happy anymore with repeating the same processes over and over again. We're looking for solutions, and we're going to use the coaches that we have in our AI tools to help us determine what those solutions could look like now, rather than just waiting for someone else to solve it on our behalf. So yeah, what should I write? Instead becomes, what system will identify the right opportunities? How do I make this better? How do I make a system that actually produces better content? And then I need more time is actually potentially, I just need a better system that then creates that additional time for me. So yeah, stepping away from the content and actually thinking a bit more about the systems with those guardrails around the content that you produce. Some sources, resources here, if you did want to go away and have a look at some of the other resources that are out on the market. Jasper is a content engine. Basically, you feed it your brand. It basically does similar to what we've done today for different tools and services, same as copy.io. AirOps is a bit more, you can configure it to work the way that you want it to be. And then Google Workspace Studio is available to everyone that is on this call already. In which case, I will ask if there are any questions that anyone has, or any thoughts, reflections, anything that they were expected to be covered that didn't get covered that I may be able to mention now. Christina.
So I've yet to use Google Workspace Studio, but I really would like to, and I have a couple of ideas how. But generally, just one question: when you, because I've worked with automations before, but when you add Gemini to the mix, do you know if I can attach it to a certain gem? Because I have like my own community assistant gem, or if it's more like generally using Gemini's general knowledge base?
That's a great question. When it was first released, you could. Then they removed all the features from it. So I expect that to come back. They haven't yet announced when they're releasing back gems or third party or even sharing documents with other people. No innovations have happened in the tool since January. So I'm not entirely sure when that will definitely come back. So you could create a standard knowledge base in a sheet and then pull that into your workflow. But I know it's not quite the same. There was the ability for you to connect NotebookLM into your Google Studio workflows as well. But again, that has been removed since they obviously had an issue early on. So hopefully it'll come back. But at the moment, no gems by default. Good, great question though. Cool.
I think I just need more practice. I tried doing one quite quickly while we were on the call because a use case came to my mind. But I mean, it sent me the email and it told me that my form had been completed, but I was expecting from what I put in for it to, I put in like the summarize step and I was expecting that summarize step to come through into the email, but it didn't. So I don't know what I did wrong there, but I mean, I was trying to listen at the same time.
I could probably show you quickly. I was to
Okay.
add an email step to this. Notify me by email. You'd need, I assume that you did this. If not, then it definitely wouldn't come through, but you would hit the variable button and then you'd choose the summary step. So I obviously don't have a summary step, but then you would choose the content that summary step creates, and then that would bring it into your email.
That's what I didn't do. See, I did, yeah.
There you
That's
go.
what I wasn't doing. Okay.
Real life use case. solving.
I have to go now.
Cool. Well, I hope that was useful. Any feedback I do always value, negative, positive, whatever it is, please do let me know. Let me know what you actually want to hear about too. I'm quite happy to change and update some of the less populated webinar pieces of content. If there's anything in particular you want to see. I know you've got a hand up, Zai, but I've just finished this bit. The next session that I'm going to host is on AI marketing intelligence, which is much more around analytics and what companies are doing around that. Please do come to that one too, if that's of interest to you. Zai.
Yes. Okay. So we're about to go, but I'm just like a reflection. Instead of using Opal for creating content, could it be also used as a research tool, I suppose?
Yeah.
Why
That's
not?
what I was-
Like, for example, let's say you have some articles you want to analyze from your competitors, so you can put it into Opal to get an analysis from it, maybe.
So they've got some out of the box examples, which are quite nice. But yes, you could absolutely use it as a researcher of many different topics, and then you could turn that into a web page.
Right.
If you had a standardized process that you wanted to go off and do some research for, like I have if I go here, I've got a tool that basically does like event-based research. This does a series of API calls to Google and to ground the information in search. But I could build something similar, not quite as good, in that Opal tool, where I go and do all these different steps for research. Someone puts in at the start what city they're looking to host an event in and what date, and then we could use that to run all the Gemini API calls. Like you could imagine that to be a use case.
This one is looking fancy though. I like it.
Yeah, it took a little while.
Okay, but cool. That was basically like my reflection.
Amazing. Alicia?
This could be, I don't know, probably a dumb question, but I think Crystal also commented on this because we have so many tools, and given what I do and the workspace that we work on, are we not able to do this and link it through like Workspace Studio, Nano Banana, Gemini, etc.? Because for me, my brain, I think, can't work through all of these tools. Is that possible? And any reason why Nano Banana can't do this, what Opal does?
Sorry, what was that question again?
So what's the difference between this and Google Workspace and Google Studio?
Yeah, what, as in Opal?
Yeah.
So Opal's just an example of a tool, right? It doesn't have to be Opal, it could be anything. The main difference is the fact that you can string in any of the Google models in a visual editor, and you can get end users, not you, because I can share this with any of you, end users to fill this out on your behalf, and then something else happens. That could come to me, it could come to them. So this tool that I showed you here, I
Yeah.
can share this with anyone. They can fill this in. They get their own personalized output. One of the nice things that I could do in this tool is I could do the same. I could say, share this form with them. They could then fill this out, get their own personalized output. Whereas if you were just building that in Google Workspace Studio, you can't collect any input from any users. You can't really make this different. The way that I've done it is by saying, put a file in my own Drive folder, and then I'll do
Right.
some stuff based on that. But that kind of functionality doesn't really exist at the moment, like being able to create this that does stuff on other people's behalf, whereas Opal is useful for that. But there are other tools like Opal, by the way, like NAN, if you're doing stuff for yourself, or if you want to play around, there's a cloud version with a free trial. Make.com, Zapier, they're all kinds of the same thing. It's just the one with Opal is all the API credits are free for you to use because you're a Google customer. It just means that it's super accessible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sorry if
Thank
I
you.
didn't quite answer your question.
No, you did. Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Janine, sounds like you've got some use cases to show on one of these in future, so I'll be calling on you. I hope you don't mind.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
Cool. In which case, guys, thank you for coming. Really appreciate the attendance. And yeah, hopefully that was useful. I'll share around the links and the recording and the slides.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers,
Thank you.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.